I think we're good to go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Open Book Fest panel. What is our panel called?
It's a sciencey thing at the back there. It says Spec, Fic, and Science.
Spec, Fic, and Science, yes. My name is Wamuwi Mbao, and I'm a literature critic with the Johannesburg Review of Books. I am also the co-convener of an art-science mashup group called FICSci, and it is in that capacity that I'm sitting here today talking to my two very esteemed panelists here. I'm deeply interested in the convergence of art and science, and I hope that we're going to have a very interesting conversation about these two topics, because obviously these two writers on my left have written some really intriguing books that speak to this topic from very diverse angles. So firstly, please welcome Dr. Adriana Marais. She's the one who isn't wearing yellow. Author of Out of This World and Into the Next, Notes from a Physicist on Space Exploration. Dr. Marais has a very long bio, and I'm going to read just select bits of it, is an award-winning theoretical physicist and internationally renowned advocate for off-world exploration. Her PhD in postdoctoral work in quantum biology on photosynthesis and the origin of the building blocks of life in space was published in top physics journals, including Physical Review Letters, and won awards from L'Oreal UNESCO and the Royal Society of South Africa, among others. She is currently a director at the Foundation of Space Development for Space Development Africa, and her work is both broad in range and exciting in spirit. Dr. Adriana Marais.
Thank you.
Joining her, the chap in yellow, is John Keevy, whose spellbinding novel, The Unwoven Warrior, had me putting in what for me is a very rare these days all-nighter to see how it ended. John is an award-winning writer and creative artist who has worked in prose, theater, children's books, and film, as well as what he describes, not euphemistically, as online content. John, I couldn't in good faith rob you of a chance to tell the audience about your most successful project. Please tell them what it's called.
It is called Genital Jousting, because of the genitals that joust. I also have a correction, though. I'm not actually award-winning. I was nominated once, and I got one for producing, but I never got anything from writing.
Manifest.
So, yeah.
Next one's always coming.
Thanks.
John, just before we get started, you said that your favorite dinosaur is a?
Pachycephalosaurus.
Yes. Why is that?
You know what? It's just got a really, really thick head, and I don't know why I relate to that.
I appreciated that. You put that into your bio. I think that's the information we want to know. Adriana, why didn't you tell us what your favorite dinosaur is? The people want to know.
Stegosaurus, Diplodocus, one of those two. Actually, they say space and dinosaurs are the two easiest themes to keep children interested in what you say. So hopefully this is a good start.
It works. So I'd like to begin by giving you, our delightful audience, a sense of these two rather divergent projects and the voice in which they're spoken. So I'm going to ask each of our authors to just read very briefly from their work so that we can get a sense of the work itself. Adriana?
Should I go?
I sprang this on them at the last minute.
We had this sprung on us, so I'm going to just read from page 1. The book is conveniently divided into 3 sections. Where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? So I tackled quite a diverse range of themes and topics and things, but at least this kept me sane in having these 3 divisions. So this is the beginning of part 1, which is where do we come from? One night at a big space conference, a friend and I decided to sneak into a prestigious invite-only dinner to which we were not invited. It was 2016, and we knew that the founder of SpaceX, Elon Musk, would be presenting his plans to make humanity multiplanetary on the main stage the following day. We knew who knew whom we might meet there. From the door, we identified 2 empty seats, strode briskly past security, and sat down as casually as possible. I nonchalantly took a large gulp of what I thought might be juice in front of me. It turned out to be tequila. We were, after all, in Mexico. The man next to me looked impressed that I had swallowed the whole lot, and skipping the small talk, asked what I felt when I look out into the stars. A sense of belonging, I replied without hesitation. The man was a cosmonaut, and a discussion about our place in the universe ensued, which has remained deeply etched into my memory to this day. As children, our homes are the houses we grow up in, surrounded by the people and places that become familiar to us. As we grow up, our perception of home grows with us, and as we learn about space and time and causality, we may not frame it in those words, a question every child asks is, where do we come from? While we have all wondered about this at some point, a few of us spend lifetimes searching for answers. The quest to understand where we come from, to understand our place, our home in the universe, is driven by an innate curiosity about the reality beyond our world, by our imagination of what lies beyond our current experience. Did you know that 10% of our bodies is as old as the universe itself? According, the rest of us is made up of the dust of exploded stars. To understand our origins, our place in the cosmos in which we find ourselves, we must follow the allure of the unknown beyond Earth, back in time to where it all and we all began, on a timeline beginning billions of years ago.
Lovely, thank you. John?
Just to preface, my book is fiction. What are you? Amkela shouted. Rain swept across him, but he was vast, a grassland of interconnected plants. Summer chased winter, and Amkela knew the seasons as a heartbeat of hot and cold, again and again. Winds tore across the land, rain, storm, sun, fire. His first dream of weather, the first memory of the great whole, a recording of patterns and change. Then part of the great whole began dreaming what was to come. What are you? Insisted Amkela. There was resistance to his question. This wasn't supposed to happen. Amkela knew how the taste of soil changed over thousands of years. The heartbeat of seasons slowed until Amkela could tell day from night. He dreamed the past and understood cycles and patterns so he could anticipate the future, droughts and floods and fires. He was dreaming what was to come. That was his purpose. That was all he was, who he was. He had no name, only purpose. He was dreaming what is to come. When the great whole expanded into new lands and climates, Amkela, as dreaming what is to come, observed how the web of natural phenomena changed. He encountered other plants and absorbed them, taking them apart to understand their properties. He'd always done that, tapping into roots that shared his soil and colonizing them. He rebuilt parts of the great whole, imitating the designs evolved to survive in different environments. The great whole expanded under his direction across the fertile plains and mountains, consuming forests and veldt, making them a part of him. You're doing this to me, said Amkela. You are absorbing me.
Lovely. You drew me right back into the story there. So I think we're all familiar with the basic booksellers convention or organizing plot, fiction and non-fiction. Non-fiction is, of course, quite a rubbish category. You don't talk about your socks as being non-shoes or anything like that. And I think what makes these two books so very interesting is that they are both, in different ways, these deeply creative kind of explorations of worlds, in one sense a world that is like ours but slightly different, and in Adriana's sense a world that kind of expands beyond the terms in which we tend to define, the kind of corporeal world that we live with. So I want to begin by asking you both about the abstract and the real. I'm asking both of you this question. Partly because I kept returning to these two concepts in reading your work. Adriana, I'll start with you, because I think that obviously space is a vast and massive thing to kind of make sense of, and it seems to constantly defeat our attempts to to try to understand it. Certainly it defeats my attempts to understand it. You've written a book, so maybe not in your case. What made you decide to write a book about space in our attempt to make sense of it and what lies out there in the universe?
Thanks. Yeah, I hadn't really decided how I would broach this topic, which we've just reminded of ourselves of here. But certainly, yeah, the relation between the abstract and the real, I think, is a great starting point. And what made me write the book on space? Well, firstly, I should say, when you say I do science or work in space technology, a lot of people immediately feel like they are not part of this community or are feeling nervous about being part of a conversation about that even. So I'd like to remind us all firstly that we're in space. The sunlight shining through the window is in fact coming from the center of the solar system. So we are in space. In some other panels, someone very beautifully said we're on an intergenerational spaceship Earth, locked into a repetitive orbit around our sun. So we're in space, so essentially space is everything in reality, and exploration is really a fundamental aspect, if not the most important aspect of who we are as humans, which I interrogate in part 2 more. But yes, this, and as you read in your book, the themes of looking out at the horizon over the savannah, that's just that descriptive part. Even in my book, I put a similar scene in which this is the origins of exploration, and humanity is sitting with nature, looking at the edge of what we can experience, whether it's on foot or by plane or by rocket, and imagining what's beyond that. And then I think the intersection of science with the imagination happens, which is a lot of the time where scientists spend their time is in fact in the realm of the imagination. And so writing this book, I suppose, was a way for me to collect my thoughts. So I'm always shocked and grateful that people have actually read the whole thing, is what I said. The people are like, you're at a book festival, stop saying that people read. But it's my first book, so I'm very honored that people have read it. And the reason I wrote the book is for myself, actually. So I'm really astonished and grateful that other people might find it interesting too. It was a way of collecting my thoughts, really, on years of being in academia. And of pondering about what's coming next for our society and also in space exploration. So, yeah.
Thank you. John, my sense of your book after reading it is that there's Herculean labor involved in kind of creating a world. I mean, right from the first page, you throw us into a world that is entirely itself. And there's a great deal involved in doing that. Obviously, you have to hold up quite a lot. There's a lot of scaffolding that you need to kind of put in place to make that world seem tangible and real and, something that's familiar to the reader. Talk us through the process of creating this story. Where did it begin?
Well, do you want me to talk through creating the story or creating the world?
Both.
Oh, okay, all right. Long ago. No, I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far back. I will go back to when I was a kid. I grew up in Elgin, but I went to school in Somerset West, and every day there was the trip along the end to over the Solaris Pass and the Overberg Mountains and down into Somerset West. And those long car trips, both then and the other ones to visit family in P or to drive up to Bloemfontein or wherever it was, I would always just kind of stare out the window when I was done with a book and start populating that space with my imagination. So I think it is the fact that the landscape around me was the first inspiration for the world and for the story.
Oh, well done on being able to read in a car, for a start.
That no one could stop me from reading. I read everywhere. Yeah, my parents gave up trying to stop me from reading at the table.
A reader from the very beginning. So I think it might be helpful for our audience. I'm wary of kind of getting running, and then meanwhile you have people in the audience who may have bought the book, but it's sitting in a carrier bag and they haven't read it yet. Would you each give us an elevator pitch, Pressy, of what your book is about? I hate to inflict such a reductive question on you, but...
You first. Wait, I'll do your book. You can do mine.
Oh.
No. That's terrible. That's a terrible idea. Please.
I've only read the back. So. Gosh, yeah. I suppose it's I'm terrible at elevator pitches. I'll drag you to the bar and give you the long version.
Slow running elevator.
Okay, quick. Yeah, so the part one is where do we come from? So interwoven with my sort of stuff I picked up in academia about the Big Bang and trying to explain that the hydrogen atoms inside the water molecules in your body were produced in the Big Bang and are therefore 14 billion years old. So this kind of way of looking at the origin of things, reality, space-time, and the light inside the universe. And then go on the journey through the planets and then to Earth eventually, which is kind of habitable clearly because we are here. And then the middle part, who are we, talks about the evolution of life on Earth, the interrelatedness of terrestrial life, the fact that we are all one terrestrial family as revealed through genetics studies, that we all share portions of our DNA with each other, from bacteria to baboons to all of the bad example, man. All of the creatures that inhabit this planet, we are all related. Terrestrial life is one big family. But from a scientific perspective, this is also one data point. So trying to understand life and understanding one example of the emergence of it is fundamentally challenged. You can't come up with a theory based on a single data point. So where are we going? Perhaps to a deeper understanding of ourselves and the reality that we live in, hopefully. And how do we achieve this? And I think space exploration, I've explained how fundamental that is. We are doing space exploration right here, right now, because... is fundamental and in fact has been part of our journey as humans to populate the surface of this planet, and it's only natural that we should continue to explore, because the perspectives that we get from going out of our comfort zone are what advances our thinking and our understanding both of reality and ourselves. And so if we stop exploring, that would be an entirely novel phase of human existence. So space exploration is both fundamental and a very natural response to finding ourselves in the universe. And yeah, hopefully I've given a motivation or hopefully inspired some excitement, whether we're participating directly or whether we are just participating by being part of the story of humans that are alive at this very unique point in history where we are able to now establish our presence beyond Earth. So it's not about leaving Earth at all. It's about expanding our presence beyond Earth. We're alive at a really, 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 really unusual time. In the 4 billion year history of life on Earth, we are alive today at a time where we are about to establish permanent human bases beyond Earth on the moon. The Apollo era was more like a visit, but this establishment of permanent research bases on the moon is really a milestone. And the Earth-Moon is one system, so Mars is naturally the next step. And that's truly a milestone. I mean, if there are intelligent aliens in the galaxy watching us, this is certainly something to watch this era. So we are all lucky to be on Earth in such a crazy and exciting time.
All right, my elevator pitch. This is an Afro-fantasy action fantasy novel. Nenkani is known as the Lion. He is the only hope of liberation in this world, a great hero, a mighty warrior, but he's not the subject of the story. The actual subject of the story is Amkela, his younger brother, who, after a disastrous betrayal, has to step into his brother's shoes and lead this resistance while making probably a very dark deal with an entity beyond the understanding of this world. Dun dun dun.
Well done. You did that without giving away any spoilers. Huh.
Thanks. I've been trying quite hard. Yeah, it's not a good easy elevator pitch because I feel like I started. No, I'm not going to get into that. Read the book and then you'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I could elevate that pitch that better.
It'll make sense. So Adriana, I like that you touched on, the the idea that we are living in a very exciting moment. And I think obviously I approach things from a very kind of humanities-based background, and I think, like a lot of people, there is something quite daunting about, the present moment and about the idea of kind of taking ourselves to other realms and tapping into other things. I think certainly, perhaps in recent times, there's been some skepticism about the question of exploration and, whether it is an extractive thing, whether it is something that truly serves a great purpose, and, all of the kind of nagging doubts that go along with that. And I say that by way of saying that, or by way of asking, that I think it's quite a brave thing to write a book which is so optimistic about the power of, kind of exploring and seeking to know more. I sense that you're an optimist in this regard, where exploration is concerned. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. I think as humans, we are space explorers in terms of 3D space or beyond Earth. We are explorers and we are in space-time, so yes. There shouldn't be any debates as to whether or not we should continue exploring, because it really is who we are, we've been exploring since the first Homo sapiens walked the Earth. The early humans who traveled, who knows how, on foot by a dugout canoe. I mean, the theories still baffle the mind, getting all the way to Australia, North America, etc. These are our ancestors. We've always been on journeys, often one-way trips, because the Mars One project might come up now, but let me remind you that we're all results of our ancestors' one-way trips somewhere. Except for maybe an extremely niche part of the population that maybe still lives in the same region, probably somewhere around here. So maybe I need to admit there might be someone in this room. Okay, most of our ancestors have traveled and made journeys to other places. And the value of this exploration, besides having allowed us to survive until this point, is perspective. But first, let me talk about the motivations for exploration. So I'd say they're kind of multifaceted, but basically in two groups. One is desperation and one is curiosity, and maybe a mixture of both. But exploring what is not known beyond our comfort zone or beyond the realm of what we think we understand to some extent. The value of that is perspective. So imagine that first photograph of Earth that was taken from a satellite beyond Earth, showing us our planet from afar. This was not something any of us had seen, being humans walking around on the surface. So this was quite a philosophical sort of revolution in how we view ourselves and our planet through the technology that enabled us to take a picture of our planet from afar. When we think about all of the potential, I don't want to go into the applications of satellite data, but I mean, having a view of climate and rivers and things from space is obviously hugely important in managing food security, water security, all the major challenges that we have. And these were not known when the Soviets launched the first Sputnik satellite in 1957. I don't think they would have known the implications for the arts and the humanities, etc., in terms of what this capability would bring. So in the same way, I think understanding that when we look up at the moon, there are researchers living and working there, looking to Mars, even more distant, and knowing that someone we know, or a friend of a friend, or family member even, is living there. And then, okay, that's just from the perspective of Earth, but the knowledge and the cultural advancements that will take place because of this new, previously foreign environment that we start to inhabit, physically in this case, of course, I'm speaking on many levels here, will always have repercussions through storytelling, whether that's through video exchange or data exchange or just conversations that people have online, via satellites, of course. This kind of interaction between people living 200 million kilometers apart, people then able to, okay, I'm saying many things here, but let me try to wrap it up. I think the main opportunity in terms of the perspective that we may gain from living on the surface of Mars would be a chance to revisit the kind of culture we want to aspire to. So I think none of us would have trouble listing the things that are wrong with the world today, but the next step in this era is to really be more conscious about where we want to get to. And that doesn't have to be Mars. In my case, there's one place which I think is going to be the start of this expansion, but for everyone it's something different. What do we want to aspire towards? And I think rethinking what kind of culture we would like to represent us as humans is a really important part of the discussion we should be having as we are all complaining about the collapse of the current sort of regime or system of thinking or whatever we want to call it. So even the thought experiment of people living on the surface of Mars is quite a powerful tool, I think. Like, we could do it right now. Like, if you got to Mars, what would your constitution look like? What would you decide amongst the group of you that happen to be there? And it could be any group of us in this room right now. What would we settle on as the kind of defining principle or regulatory system or whatever you want to call it on which we would base our society? And like, why have we not had this conversation here on Earth? And so this is a roundabout way of like saying the power, even of thinking about living on Mars, just opens up new perspectives, new ways of thinking, and potentially new ways of defining ourselves and our culture that may emerge from just having this conversation, in fact.
Very briefly, why Mars?
It's the only feasible option. So, I mean, the moon is too close because clearly the nations that send space missions to the moon will just mirror the regulations on Earth there. So it'll be like Antarctica, kind of. Hopefully as peaceful as Antarctica, let's see. But on Mars, 20 light minutes away, 7 months by spacecraft away, there wouldn't be this it wouldn't be a mirror image of the culture or regulatory system on Earth. By definition, people there would need to come up with their ways of solving problems locally, because a 40-minute delay in an answer to a question could mean death or the extinction of the whole community there. So local culture, regulatory systems, decision-making, medical procedures, all of that stuff's going to happen locally. So when we think about Mars, it's going to be very difficult for nations on Earth to expect to replicate their economic system or their whatever political system on Mars. So it's a real opportunity for, I wanted to say anarchists, but that's probably the wrong words, like me, to really think about exploring different possible realizations of culture that are not necessarily tied to the legacy of the systems that are busy collapsing here on Earth.
Do you mean something more like a libertarian view, like techno-libertarianism?
Oh, yes, that sounds fancy.
All right.
I thought I was detecting a slightly skeptical frown on your face.
Well, elaborate, yeah, before I agree.
Oh, and like techno-libertarianism is the basically the idea that technology will enable people to have radically free lives from intervention and the collapse of like the state. They still have all the challenges of figuring out like most libertarian problems, which are, the tragedy of the commons and such things like that. But yeah, so a lot of it kind of depends on that, the idea that individuals who achieve power via like their technological prowess or their mastery of technologies become those who can define the world around them.
Mm.
John, for you, my question, I think, goes to the fact that with the Unwoven Warrior, the world that you've kind of constructed is rooted very much in violent struggle, colonial domination of sorts, and an overarching kind of contestation about how to live on that planet. And it would perhaps be a bit too simplistic to want to read that as an allegory. I mean, it lends itself to, there are definite parallels, but I like that you don't immediately just make it like a simple one-to-one allegory with Earth. But I'm interested in the way that your characters have to square up against almost impossible odds. That's very much what it feels like when you're reading this book. You kind of sit there on the edge of your seat going like, okay, but, can they actually do this? But that does lead me to question, whether, if we've defined that Adriana's an optimist here, I think we've gotten that sense from her. Is there a note of hope for you in terms of the planetary?
I'm not a terribly hopeful person. I'm not a natural optimist.
Your yellow was misleading.
Yes. Well, yellow is apparently the favorite color of psychopaths, so...
Don't give away our secrets.
No, sorry, I just had to refresh myself. I think a lot of the issues of power play out over and over again, simply because often the world has an incentive, or rather, should I not say the world, like the systems that are empowered have the incentive to take by force from other people to exploit. We are finally like entering, I think, the possibility of an era where, you know, trade is more appealing than war most of the time, where we've slipped from having many interstate wars to mostly having civil wars, not interstate, interstate, you know what I mean, because international trade like links us so powerfully together. However, that has created the new like levels of class warfare that is just at a staggering capacity, a staggering global extent of exploitation of people. And until we are able to really see everyone else as equals and worthy of being looked after, until we are able to recognize that someone else's benefit does not have to come at my expense, we will always tread these same paths of tragedy.
And on that very hopeful note, I would be remiss if at a writing and literary festival I didn't ask both of you about your writing processes, because you've both kind of put together these books, and a book is nothing if not a labor of writing, you know. So let's talk about the writing. What do you do? How do you write?
All right, so I'll go first for this one. Okay. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I sit in front of the computer before my brain switches on so that I don't get it polluted by Instagram or doom scrolling or reading anything else. And I write until I've hit 500 words. And then if I'm feeling still on a roll, I'll keep on writing. And then at 2 p.m. when I'm feeling fried, I'll go for a walk and just relax. That was how I wrote this book, and I wish I could live my life like that. Unfortunately, I have to work for a living. Yeah.
It's my first book, so I actually started writing it in 2016 after watching Elon Musk give that presentation, and it was hanging over me for all those years. I wouldn't say I was writing it for all those years, but until this year when it was published. So I tend to leave things till the last minute, so I actually did 2 10-day water fasts to finish the book so that I could work for like 14 hours a day without having to buy food, make food, wash up dishes, think about what I was going to eat next. That saves a lot of time. So I don't know if I should recommend this to anyone, but it does bring clarity. And those 10 days without doing anything else except was just enough to cover the whole book, so I did that twice.
That's a new one.
But this is extreme procrastination in play here.
All the writers in the audience going, waterfalls. So, I mean, you mentioned he who should not be named, but I think, again, partly, you know, a question that lingered with me while I was reading your book is that, on the one hand, you are asking and answering some really big questions about, you know, exploration and the idea that it is something that is within our very human sense of ourselves. But on the other hand, obviously at the moment, and it's always necessary to know that this is just a sort of isolated point in a very long story, you know, it's difficult to ignore the very kind of noisy techno-billionaire dudes, you know, the Musks and who's the other one, Bezoses of the world. How do you where do you position your work in relation to that noise?
Well, yeah, I saw there was a review somewhere online where the book was called Tone Deaf, so yeah, I realized this is a... You know, who would dare to speak about space exploration in this time of war and poverty, you know? Okay. But so I hope that my book would be readable beyond the current era, and so, you know, a lot of the things we do as society and the things that are part of our society have been sort of hijacked by and are represented by a group of people that we don't necessarily agree with, like take the governments of most countries, for example, and the billionaire leaders, yeah. So I think, as I've tried to explain, we are in space and we are fundamentally explorers by nature. So I don't see anything controversial about talking about space exploration. On a more practical level, people often talk about the resources that are spent on space exploration. Shouldn't we better spend these on solving poverty on Earth? I'm like, aren't we already throwing resources at trying, or are we? Are we not already trying to solve poverty on Earth? And has it got not exploring beyond Earth, where has that got us? And arguably, this is kind of a hiatus in our exploration because we find, TripAdvisor, Google Maps, you can zoom into any place on the Earth. So we have kind of reached the critical point of physically exploring the surface of Earth where we can zoom in with the camera in a lot of places. So that part of our exploration is somehow done. And now we're in the point where we're just continuing to grow our population, but yet we're not still physically exploring. And yes, we can still metaphorically explore in many ways, and we all do, of course, but maybe that physical exploration is such an intrinsic part of who we are as humans that we would do well to keep following that instinct. And resource-wise, if we want to talk practically, the resources that are spent on space exploration don't leave Earth. I mean, this is an illusion that the resources spent on space leave Earth. The resources what is invested in for space exploration is human knowledge, so the engineers and the scientists and all the people who get the technical capability to make it happen, they stay on Earth, typically, most 99% of the time, they stay on Earth. So these are skilled humans who've become technically adept at doing certain things, and these skills are always transferable. Like, for example, during COVID, the SKA, the Square Kilometre Array Radio Telescope team here in South Africa, just repurposed their engineering lab to build ventilators. So, this is a direct example of how these skills are not localized to space necessarily. And what leaves Earth when things leave Earth is like a few tons of metal. It's really a blip in the radar. We're not losing anything through exploring space. In fact, we're gaining, exponentially more through the skills, the imaginations that are involved, the science that we learn from, all of these skill sets basically are the critical part of what we're investing in when we invest in space. Basically, we're investing in curiosity. And talking about the systems that represent us having been hijacked by idealism that we don't agree with, we can look at academia and see fundamental research is no longer being funded. So, space exploration, what it is to me is something fundamental as what we do as humans. Academia is the pursuit of knowledge, but we can see both of these and governance of a country should be done with blah, blah, blah. What we see at all these things have been hijacked basically with the goal of power and profit. So I don't think there's any, whatever topic you choose, you could be told that you're tone deaf for investigating that because it's been hijacked by some group of people. So I hope my book is around longer than the current era. I hope we're around longer than the current era. Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk, I think, needs to focus on building the transport systems to Mars and let the rest be, in a nutshell, yeah.
I'd rather he didn't.
Not even?
No, because the whole idea of going and setting up a new culture in a new place, it's going to be defined by the people who arrived there first. The people who crossed to the Americas, Columbus and such, they didn't do a very kind job to people they found there. And Elon Musk's total disregard for workers' rights, his record of racism, his record of pulling Sig Heil, kind of speaks for itself. That is not the person I want defining the future. And I think
totally
that
agree.
happens a lot with tech, is that we have these people who are in this these positions of power where they're using incredible amounts of resources, often also the government resources, which are being directed to them in truly terrifying ways. Yeah.
But the good news is, I mean, it's highly unlikely Elon Musk is going to be one of the people slaving away on the surface of Mars, working 14-hour days to envisage a new culture and a new world and all of the challenges that come with that. So luckily, the people who get there are not going to be the people that we might think of who are leading in the space industry here.
I'm skeptical about that too. He is going to transfer into his consciousness into a machine. That's the whole thing behind Neuralink.
Turn it off.
He's just going
turn
to
it off.
I would, yeah. I can't believe you want to kill Elon Musk.
The virtual Elon Musk.
Oh, there goes my X algorithm.
But the people who get there first, critically, yes, and that's why, yeah, I think it's important that for those who it does appeal to are the people who actually go, and it's not this kind of workforce thing, that it's really people traveling there with their vision for a new culture and a new future. Yeah, anyway, long
I mean, I think, you know, what we're definitely picking up here is this kind of when I say that you're working with really big questions, Adriana, I do mean that. You know, a lot of these things are beyond the scope of the individuals who we tend to kind of hyper-focus on. But at the same time, it is very difficult to not kind of be drawn into like, okay, but, you know, this person is, for instance, defining a particular pathway in terms of where knowledge is going, and you know, so I see both sides of that.
I mean, I would love to see Mars set up as a collectivist utopia with socialism and such like to all work together and flourish. I would love that. Yeah. So if they go and define it and they redefine it like that, cool.
I think it would naturally emerge to some extent, because when you think about it, so what would the constitution for Mars be? I've held these workshops, I've thought about it, and for me the defining principle of the constitution that would be created, I believe, this would be a good one, and also believe it would naturally emerge, is respect for life. Like, we've got too much of a good thing here on Earth. Like, we've forgotten that Earth is the only planet we know of that hosts life. We have forgotten, like, we do not embody the great gratitude that we should have for living on a planet with such diversity of living systems. I mean, I've tried to understand life, like my PhD was on quantum biology, and I realize it's not going to be possible with the current state of human knowledge. Like, it's going to remain a mystery for the foreseeable future what life is. And therefore, just respect it, okay, just respect it. And that's what we've lost touch with here on Earth because of the abundance of life. You know, how often do you feel grateful for the bacteria in your stomach, for the plants outside, the algae in the ocean, all of these things that we continue to kind of trash. You know, we've lost respect not only for each other, but also for all the living systems that we share the space with. My point being, on Mars, we will have a harsh reawakening to just how much we need to respect these living systems, because without the bacteria to stimulate the plant growth, without the insects to, you know, fertilize the plants in the greenhouse, etc., the colony comes to, why did I use that word? The settlement. I never do. You guys have made me nervous. The settlement comes
to post-production.
So
it's not mentioned once in my book, by the way. The settlement comes to an abrupt ending. You know, as soon as you lose respect for life, the whole thing comes to an end. And perhaps that's exactly the lesson we need to learn. All 8 billion of us don't need to go to Mars to learn this lesson. We've got communication systems thanks to technology. We can live this story through a few people going there and demonstrating that it is possible to live with a respect for life, that competition is not what defines us, collaboration is what defines us, and a return to these principles of respect and collaboration is actually a more natural embodiment of what it is to be human than this current kind of broken system that we've arrived at.
I thought that your point fed very nicely into the question I was actually going to aim at you, John, which was about the fact that I think one of the key aspects of your novel that I found quite interesting is that you, amongst many, is that you have this almost, and I hate to use Lovecraft in a positive sense. But
you can say Eldritch. I prefer cosmic Eldritch,
yes,
something like that. Yeah.
Kind of style of planetary consciousness that exists as a thing in the book. Consciousness that you call dreaming what is to come. You know, which Keller, the main character, becomes sort of enmeshed with, in quite a literal sense. Would you say a bit about that?
What do you want me to say about that?
Say anything you like. We've got about 2 minutes for questions.
About 2 minutes for questions. I'm a huge science fiction nerd, and I'm also a huge fantasy nerd, and I wanted to write in the intersection of those two things.
Which you've done.
I don't know if thank you. I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Octavia Butler. She was a big inspiration in that kind of sort of biological fantasy, bringing vampires and aliens and horror into like quite a visceral, science-y based place. Science-y? It's not a word.
We'll go.
And I wanted to explore ideas of like consciousness and AI and 3D printing and all these things in a world that wasn't where the technological metaphor wasn't metal and electricity. I think of a lot of like the technology systems ending up being a more like. What's our big metaphor for something? Is it bio? Is it steampunk or whatever? And to kind of give the middle finger to the kind of clockwork steampunk genre, which is extremely Victorian and in many ways like regressive. Although I don't know the Antikythera. Mechanism, which is like this orrery that they found in the Mediterranean. This is like thousands of years. Anyway, we got off track. I go down a lot of Wikipedia rabbit holes when I study. And I got into pitcher plants and how they, decay things. And I looked into like the idea of like how much memory can be fitted in like a biological container. I find fascinating your work in like the quantum realms of plants and things. I'm fascinated by it. I don't understand any of it. But
no one does.
But it's fascinating that the how close can nature get to something that we imagine is a technological creature result, and that's also like inspiration from Star Trek: Next Generation, the episode where they go to a planet that just has a crust of silicon dioxide around it that has evolved into being a world-spanning computer. The idea of like what the different models of consciousness could be, what they could emerge as, was just very interesting to me, and how they would interact with like our own human individual idea of community. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned Star Trek because when I was drafting my initial round of questions, I went down a very kind of Star Trek and utopias, and I was like, no, this is going to be too imbecilic.
I mean, Star Trek is it's super utopian. It's one of like the most utopian science fiction things in terms of space exploration and their missions to reach out. I think it's the highest ideal of what humanity as a spacefaring race could be.
Yeah. There's an entire other panel there, but shall we throw it open to the audience for some questions? We've got an eager hand. Wait for the microphone.
Hi. Oh, is this on? Yes. Hi, I'm Anna, and my question's for Adriana. I think I got your name right. Yeah. So I am in the sciences, care a lot about the sciences, and I think obviously South Africa has a very big science problem. Like especially with maths and physics, like the whole system's pretty broken. And I think there's a lot of skepticism and fear, and you mentioned, especially with the theoretical maths and theoretical physics. So what would your case be to motivate? Why is it important to study maths and statistics and theoretical computer science and theoretical physics? How would you motivate why that's important, even if we don't know right now why it's going to be useful in the future?
Thanks, nice question. Let me start off on a sort of in the current era of talking about AI and the advancement and I don't know what the future holds with that, but that is a strong call for human intelligence, in my opinion. It's as simple as that. We can't be building systems that we call intelligent unless we keep up in terms of our understanding of the fundamental underpinnings of these technologies, in terms of the functionality of them, being able to build them. I mean, we can't start outsourcing everything to AI because, I haven't worded that very eloquently, but I think you know what I mean. But on the other hand, I think if we encourage people to be curious, people in general, they will naturally be drawn to topics which include the study of reality. I always find it confusing that people don't study physics, and then I think there must be other reasons, because trying to understand the nature of reality is what we do as humans. Whatever field you name, there's different ways you could interpret that as a field where we are exploring ourselves and our place in reality and reality itself. So physics is just one, the scientific approach to studying that problem, and it has severe limitations. So yes, it has enabled us to build technologies. But so to answer your question before I go off on another tangent, I think if we encourage young people to be curious from as soon as they can talk and interact like young, then naturally we will have people drawn to the language of reality, which seems to be mathematics. And of course, there are many other ways we can interrogate reality, of course. But then I was thinking more about what you said about nature and technology, like nature evolving to approximating technology, but I think it's the other way around. So I would say the main maybe limitation on the currently existing technology that we have is that it's emerged from a deterministic science. And when we look at nature, we see a lot of probability entering into the game because the systems are so large, so complex. A small sort of change here can result in a huge dynamical effect somewhere else. And then I see a lot of analogies with quantum physics where it's a probabilistic kind of system where things exist in a complex sort of structure, and a small trigger in one place can result in a large outcome somewhere else. I'm being very abstract here, but maybe if we wanted to enter the next wave of technologies, instead of looking to nature for inspiration for our technologies, we'd really trying to look more fundamentally at what nature is in fact doing, and I would say that's non-deterministic, and then maybe we look at not only the intersection of art and science, but really the joining of art and science, because they are sort of fundamentally joined. I think there is an art to trying to understand things that you don't fully understand. Maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew here, but let me leave it there.
Can I take a swing at that one?
Please.
Oh, for like education, I think there is a tendency in the very young to gender the subjects and to look at something that our first interaction with chemistry is when we cook. But we don't look at that as chemistry and science, because chemistry and science tend to be masculinized, and cooking must then be feminized and must be like de-intellectualized. But if you...
The Maillard reaction is the heart of all goodness.
I'm not that fancy. That's brown. That's when you brown it, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Good.
Exactly. But you know, like from the rising of bread to the cooking of steam to the denaturing of proteins, like it's all there in cooking. And if you can find those points of physics and chemistry in the very education for the very young, they will have that as part of their language when they grow up. They won't be alienated from it. It won't be, oh, that's for people over there, that's not for me.
Good.
We had a question over here.
Hello. So I'm asking this question more from an English department perspective, where I suppose the way that I think about self-understanding, human self-understanding, is perhaps less material and more questions of kind of philosophy, how we know what we know, ways of being, more, I suppose, in the mind, self-reflective in that way. And so when I think about the language around, I suppose, yeah, I would call it colonizing Mars, right? I think the reason that even that Freudian slip sort of speaks to the way that the language is the same, because in many ways the project is the same. And I'm curious to know then, well, multiple things. So I believe very strongly in the ability of literature fiction to offer us imaginaries that provide new ways of being and seeing. But I also think that there are ways that we might, even as we're trying to resist certain ways of thinking and being, we might land up replicating them at the same time, or replicating certain kinds of colonial narratives at the same time. And so I guess my question is, how do we balance an optimism for the future and for certain kinds of exploration, which I wouldn't necessarily... I think there's a very important difference between exploration and extraction and expansion in a land sense. So how do we construct, what is the duty, I suppose, when you're writing yourselves? What do you see as your kind of duty in constructing these imaginaries, and how do you resist repeating certain kinds of, or, yeah, again, sort of maybe not even actively enough resisting certain kinds of narratives that perhaps should be. I guess that's my question, if it makes sense. It's a little bit long-winded.
Beautifully said.
Oh, it was on me. Okay. Well, I definitely didn't hit all the targets on that one. I think as much as I tried to acquaint myself with discussions on black representation in literature, I definitely failed in many ways with this book. I tried my best, and often I fell back on just I didn't fall back on it. I kept on rediscovering my naivete when I first set out to write the book. And then I'd gone in 100,000 words, and I was, shit, I better just keep going. It's going to be the artifact of me in my time and place, and it's going to be as flawed as I am in many ways, and it's going to, I think, get right the things that I try to get right in the world. I don't think that we should allow perfect to be the enemy of good, or simply to be the enemy of trying. We still have to just try our best.
I think you sell yourself a bit short there. I mean, your book is a deeply anti-colonial kind of project, and it does very interesting things. Again, we could have a whole other...
I owe a lot to Keevy Butler and Frans Fanon and all the
Butler is
guys.
a very interesting panel to go down with that. I think we've just about run out of time. We've got one last question.
Thank you. Hey everyone, I'm Marais. Hi John. My question is for you, Adriana. I was really intrigued by the notion that exploration has always been sort of intrinsically part of the human experience. And I couldn't help but think the other side of that coin is this intrinsic desire to settle or find a Shangri-La or something like that, get back to a kind of homeostasis. Our neurological systems long for that kind of inertia almost, right? Our mythologies start where there is a perfect place and then we have to move somewhere in the hopes of finding another perfect place to settle. And that's also what a lot of fiction does. So I'm wondering, what is your take on, is there a terminus? Is there a point where we go as a species, okay, enough now. We've found what we wanted and we're happy to stay?
The simple answer is no, I think. Can we find equilibrium? Well, equilibrium is death, right? So life is fundamentally non-equilibrium. So I would say no in the simple answer. But what are we aspiring towards? I think tool sets, and I mean that sounds like a very mechanical answer, but skill sets, let's say knowledge, let's say a level of advancement in terms of our understanding of who we are and where we are. And I think exploration, as I said, is driven by maybe desperation or curiosity or some mixture. But the hugely traumatic climate shifts that humans have already survived through on Earth, we survived as a result of our ability to explore as and migrate to new places, and then critically our tools and our culture. And I was at the Origins of Mankind site up in Gauteng recently and chatting about fire, controlling fire. So this is arguably like the start of rocket science. This was this documentary I was shooting. The start of rocket science happened there right outside Joburg when humans, our ancestors actually, probably Australopithecus at that point, potentially controlled fire for the first time. Not necessarily starting it, but finding out of bushfires, taking it back to the cave and keeping it alive. So I was thinking about tools and resource controlling tools like fire, etc. But the researcher I was talking with, he said that the time, those extra few hours that humans had in the evenings with the light of the fire to talk, was arguably the most important side effect of this new technological capability, is the development of culture. Discussing strategy, discussing the very notion of discussing, or language may have emerged in these times where people weren't foraging or doing something for survival, but now enjoying these extra few hours of light at the light of the fire. And this for me was quite interesting thinking. But this, again, I think is parallel in what I've been trying to say about to dumb it down, the reasons why we need to expand beyond Earth is because of this cultural stuff that will come alongside the tool creation that we can't even predict what the impact of that would be. just the chance to get out of the daily business of survival through the tools, we create more time for ourselves, right? Or we should. It's not the situation we're in now, but that could be the situation we're in, whereby we have more time because the tools are doing the jobs that we would have done. So what do we do with that time? Is it necessarily an advancement during that time? Maybe not, but that's why I think we need to be conscious about what the tools give us, and I think maybe time is an important aspect of that. Will we reach an end point? No, but I've always thought writing fiction must be the most terrifying thing, because to your question, like, the challenge for me was how to conclude the book. And in nonfiction, you can turn to reality for that. And what I saw was I was trying to, like, in the end, put forward this concept of unity of all things. And I could see it clearly in the physics, so there was nothing for me to do there. Like the hydrogen atoms that are in our molecules, the genetics that we share with all life on Earth, it just screams out like everything's one, and so that was a natural conclusion that I could turn to reality to reach. And so what is the end point of our advancement? I don't think there will be one. Oh, why did I open this case?
Dyson sphere around the whole like universe.
Yes. Since we're in a finite space, there should be some kind of conclusion that we reach, but maybe the non-equilibrium nature of things is that something that we need to learn to live with. Oh, but I was going to say we could become like cosmic hunter-gatherers, where we don't stay in one place, but we have the tools on our craft, where we just travel around meeting different, it's like Star Trek, I suppose. Meeting different cultures and,
In sexy tight uniforms.
And not setting up camp anywhere in specific, but living a dynamical kind of societal advancement in space and time and in the inner world too. Yeah.
And on that note,
No, we can't end now. No, Wamuwi, you've got to tell us about this whole project, the science, what is it called?
Fixi.
Fixi.
Oh, okay.
You got it because
we've got a captive audience. Yes. Once a year, myself and someone who is funded very well by the Saatchi Chair in Science Communication, we host a project where we get 12 writerly creative types together with one scientist from a very diverse set of disciplines. It's a different discipline each year. They come together, we put you up in lovely accommodation at a place called Montfleur. It's very secluded from everything. And you spend 4 days listening to a scientist's science. And then you write about it. And then we produce a publication, and that gets published by the time we're ready to do the next one. So
and it's online. It's online. It's free. You can
it's
get them
online.
all.
It's free. You can find it there at our fixi.co. If you just Google Fixi, you'll find it. I can't remember the website right now. But more importantly, we send out the call every year. So when the call comes out, it'll be on our socials and my socials, etc. Do look out for it. And if you're interested, apply, because it's fun.
Did you know that N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth trilogy came about from just such a program? Yeah.
But you see, this is art and science. And on that note, please join me in giving a warm hand to...
Look forward to reading it.